At 6, a funeral failure. A family left waiting and worrying after Mequon woman's body never showed up at the cemetery.
It was rough. It still is.
Clarence Hittenrow says he waited by his wife's gravesite for 5 hours, but the hearse never showed up with his wife's body. Rebecca Clough asked that funeral home what happened.
Shannon, the funeral home says a lost driver and weather played a role in the whole situation, but a family says that doesn't change the fact their loved one's body was missing for 12 hours.
The Hittenrow family got up very early on February 2nd. They drove 3.5 hours north to Clark County to say a final goodbye to June Hittenrow. They were going to lay her to rest in the town she was born. Her husband of 60 years and their 4 children stood in the cold around her grave.
I waited for the hearse to show up and waited and waited.
It was supposed to be there at 11:30. At 12:30, the family called the funeral home in Brookfield, Church and Chapel. They were given the driver's number, who told the family he was halfway there in Plover, Wisconsin.
It took him 5 hours to get to Plover, which is an easy hour and 45-minute drive. So what happened to him, I don't know.
The family checked back an hour later. The driver said he was 45 minutes away. After another hour, they called again.
We kept calling and calling, no answer. Church and Chapel tried to reach him, they couldn't reach him.
Worried, the family and funeral home called the Clark County Sheriff's Department. Deputies from several counties put out an alert for a missing hearse, but it was never found. The family stayed at the grave until 4:30, when the cemetery finally told them they had to leave. I talked to the owner of Church and Chapel in Brookfield, Ted Larson, to ask what happened. He wouldn't talk to me on camera, but said the driver, a licensed funeral director, got lost during a winter storm and ended up in a ditch. After getting pulled out by a farmer, the driver turned around and drove back to Brookfield rather than going to the cemetery. Larson says the driver didn't do anything wrong except not communicating where he was. The family disagrees, saying 2 of June's children never got to see their mother buried.
It was rough. It still is.
Now, a funeral was held 2 days later for June Hittenrow. Church and Chapel paid to bring the family back to Clark County. They also offered a full reimbursement, but Clarence Hittenrow refused. He says they cannot make what happened right. The driver was let go from the company.
All right, Rebecca, thank you. Sad story.